Hey Adapters, welcome back. Joining me today is Samantha McDonald. Samantha is a data analyst at Greenlink Analytics. She conducts data analysis that specializes in utility burden, racial and social equity geospatial mapping. She has assisted with several publications in energy efficiency and has experience working on urban sustainability for several nonprofits. Samantha holds an MA in economics and policy studies from Georgia State University. Samantha will share her work with clean energy transitions and social equity analysis at Greenlink Analytics. We'll touch on how Greenlink's work helps cities tackle their most pressing sustainability and clean energy problems, as well as their new mapping tool for cities and community organizations called the Greenlink Equity Map, or GEM. Hey Samantha, welcome to the show.
Hey, how are you doing?
All right, yes, you're coming in. Where am I interviewing you from?
I am in Atlanta, Georgia right now, in Virginia Highlands at my home. We are currently still working from home during this pandemic time.
Well, it sounds like it might last a little bit longer, but okay, let's just jump right into this. What is Greenlink Analytics? And we'll get into some of the projects and stuff a little bit later, but who are you guys?
Okay, so we are Greenlink Analytics. We're based in Atlanta, Georgia. We basically work with a number of cities across the US. So I think we're working with 75 cities right now, over 30 states. And we basically help cities figure out how to transition towards, clean and renewable energy. We help them with their social justice issues, kind of just, I guess, consult them and help them figure out just how to move forward in this climate world that we're living in right now.
And you guys are actually a nonprofit organization, right?
Yes, we are. We are a nonprofit 501c3. So.
All right, you guys do some amazingly technical issues for a nonprofit. I'm very impressed. How old is the organization?
So we've been around for about 5 years. We started off as the Greenlink Group, and we've since moved forward as Greenlink Analytics now that we're a nonprofit. So.
All right, so let's just dive into some of the work that you're doing. And I'd mentioned GEM, which is Greenlink Equity Map. What is that?
Okay, so the Greenlink Equity Map is something near and dear to my heart. When I started at Greenlink about 4 years ago, I was just an intern. And this was kind of my first project I worked on, starting from scratch, like with Matt Cox, our CEO, and another colleague that was there at the time. But basically, GEM is a mapping platform where we map energy burden, or the percentage of income that you spend towards your electricity or natural gas or water bills at a census tract level. So not only can you see that across every census tract in the US, you can see about 30 other equity indicators in there. So you're able to map race along with health data like asthma rates, health insurance, lack of internet access. So all sorts of indicators. You can map them on top of each other and try to be able to tell a story of how your city looks and where inequity lies, depending on where you live.
Okay, I want to learn more about that. And you're a data person. I'm sure to you, data, it's like, give me more data so I can use this. And you obviously want reliable data, but this notion of equity indicators, I think you mentioned about 30 of them. I mean, where do you get that? Are you generating that yourself? Are there like government entities you're pulling it from? How does that all work?
Yeah, so our energy burden data is actually our own methodology, but we do pull it from a number of sources like the Census Bureau, and it's self-reported data, and we basically aggregate it all and do a bunch of calculations to figure out, the average monthly spending of your energy bills. But a lot of our data sources, other than that, come from public data sources. It just kind of depends on where we get them from. So it's a big process, and it's been a long road of us starting from making one by one like Tableau maps is where we started, and now it's this like huge web app. We're working with developers. T-Tech, Tranosaurus Tech is helping us like get everything on the platform. So it's been a learning process, but we're super excited about it. So.
Well, deciding what equity indicators to use, that in itself must be an issue. And so do you have all that in-house expertise, or are there particular people that you consult to say, are we covering all the right ground here when we're trying to generate an equity map?
Yeah, so I mean, we definitely take our data sources from public sources and vet them ourselves. We have a whole data science team that does quality control and makes sure that all the data is making sense and is ready to go. But we also consult with a lot of cities. Obviously, cities and states are our biggest users of GEM, and we're constantly communicating with them, asking them what their needs are, what they want to see in the platform, how this data is helping them, and having conversations around, does this actually represent your community? And if not, how can we fix it, and how can we compare it with another data source to make sure that we're getting the most accurate data? So,
well, can you share a specific city that you're working with GEM?
we're working with a lot of cities. So we are part of the American Cities Climate Challenge. It's about 25 cities. So we've been honored to be part of that, and we've been working with cities as large as Los Angeles and Chicago, all the way down to Clarkston, Georgia. So I think their population is around 13. I think it's 13,000. A pretty small population. Obviously, we've helped with Atlanta and Athens and local communities, but yeah, we've used this data to. The first thing that comes to mind is just like clean energy planning and helping write these clean energy plans. Just kind of walking them through and being like, here is where people are most affected, and here are some ways that you can help them. So,
well, and I think part of what you walk them through too is like, what impact could this have on the overall city too? I mean, what sort of language are you using, saying, all right, you're using this software and this is the kind of impact that you're going to have?
I'm sorry, can you rephrase that question?
Sorry, that's my. So I guess there's an impact to actually using the software, and so when you're talking to a city, say, well, the value of using this, and so I guess clean energy transition would be part of it, and the equity is kind of built into that, and so I guess the city's saying, all right, what's this map going to do for us?
Right. Yeah. So I mean, when a city is given their data, the first thing that comes to mind, and I guess in a lot of people's minds, is like, where are we seeing these large disparities? Like, which areas are experience high energy burden? What do those neighborhoods look like in terms of race, income? Are there high asthma rates in that area? And so being able to look at that map and combine it with clean energy planning, it really kind of takes like the analytical piece and the policy piece and brings them together to say, analytically, here's what you can do to move towards 100% clean energy, but also here are the policies you can take advantage of, and here's how you can direct them to those communities who are maybe affected the most, and let's work with those communities to make sure that their voices are heard, and make sure we're not just like coming in as an outside organization and just like telling them what their problems are.
All right, so maps can be very powerful, but sometimes you'll just put up a map and some people are just, what am I looking at here? Are you part of that process of, all right, here's the interpretation? And once you can see that moment where they're like, wow, now I get it, but sometimes you have to walk them through exactly what they're looking at, right?
Yeah, so I'm not necessarily part of that as much anymore. Diamond, who is actually our lead GEM person who kind of walks everyone through that, will go and show everyone how to use their data. But everyone as a team, like the data science team, the analytics team, Matt, has been a part of the process of choosing how we want to display the data, choosing what colors we want to use to make sure that people can see which communities are affected, but also being sensitive towards those communities. Like once, it's been an interesting process, like being part of a startup, you wear many, many hats. So not only, are we data analysts and data scientists and communications people, but we all kind of like work together to, I don't know, figure out how to display this information. It's hard work.
Right. It's just map reading isn't necessarily the easiest thing to do, even though it can be very powerful. It's just like, this is what it actually means. And so that is an art in itself. Well, let's talk a bit more about clean energy. And you have some other tools there, the ACEs and Athena, or
Athena.
Athena,
Yeah.
thank you. What are those?
So I'm going to completely butcher this because I am not part of the data science team, and I try so hard to explain it, so bear with me. But Athena is this big machine learning model that Matt Cox actually started. And I feel like the best way to describe it is almost like an input-output model. So it takes in all of these hourly, like hour by hour supply and demand metrics. It goes through Athena, it's the best way I can describe it, and then we'll give you like a cost benefit analysis of shifts in the energy sector. So an example like that I can best describe it as was, we did this project with Virginia, basically figuring out what would their state look like if they had adopted the zero emission standard and low emission standard that California and other states have. So not only do we want to know like how much is this going to cost and what are the shifts and vehicle trends going to look like, but what is the shift in the grid going to look like? So, I mean, when you think electric vehicles, you think it's an automatic solution, but really you're plugging in an electric vehicle into the grid and you're using electricity. So if that grid is not 100% renewable, what is the effect on these electric vehicles? So Athena can help us figure that out. If we are to have 10,000 new electric vehicles plugging in at the same time every day, what is that going to do to the grid? What does that mean in terms of pollution and coal and natural gas and the effects of that? I hope that made sense. I hope I explained that well.
No, you did. And it's just, I created a bunch of other questions in my head too, that you, in a lot of ways, when you're working with these cities, you're just helping them create some hypothetical situations. I'm like, oh, well, if we wanted electric cars, but how hard would it be to get more solar, like 50%? So you're giving them those kind of scenarios to help them make those decisions, right?
Yeah. And you mentioned the other tool, ACEs. So we use that tool in conjunction with Athena. So we take all of that hourly load data from Athena and put it in this model called ACEs. And so ACEs is kind of more of an interactive, like a client interactive tool where they can actually go in and they can say, I want to know how much it will cost to install 100% clean and renewable energy in my community. What do the costs look like? What does the pollution look like? How does that affect energy burden and energy bills? What kind of jobs am I creating? So we bring in all of these different metrics, like specific to that city, to inform decisions and kind of like walk them through their options as they move forward.
Well, when you hear these announcements, you guys must really understand what's going on. You'll just see that, the state of California wants to be 100%, clean energy by, and I'm throwing this, I don't know the exact, 2035 or 2050. And there's different years that are kind of used. So you guys kind of understand like, well, this is the process that they got to select that year, right? Because it's just like there's all these other things underneath the hood you have to figure out before you pick a year that you're going to kind of get there, right?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of times it starts with the city will come in and say we want it to be by 2050 or 2030, and we do kind of have a little bit of I guess, a say in what they should do. We can guide them to say, it would make more sense for you to do it by this year. Obviously, the sooner the better. But with cities and states, they all have such complicated political things going on behind the scenes, and a lot of times, like, they would love to have clean energy by 2030, but because of certain political things, maybe they can't do it by 2050. So that's where we come in and say, this sucks, but we'll try to give you as much as you can get by 2050. And here are things you can do, outside of what's in this plan, I guess.
Well, I imagine too, and maybe you could explain, some city officials, they have just a stereotype what a clean energy transition might even mean. But what is that? What does it mean you're just doing that transition?
So just shifting away from the use of fossil fuels. In a lot of cases, it's moving to solar, moving to community solar. Maybe it's moving to offshore wind. Some bring in using nuclear or buying RECs. But for the most part, we try to focus our attention on clean and renewable energy at the lowest cost and the fairest way possible.
So if you're working with a specific city, you're taking geographic information into mind. You're not going to recommend offshore wind for Nebraska, right? I mean that.
Yeah, I don't know if that makes sense for a state like that. Yeah.
So, but I mean, again, it's just like these are the most likely sort of prescriptive ways of generating clean energy, and that's how cities are. That's the sort of down to the micro level information you guys get to.
Yeah, I mean, basically, so everyone that works on our team is super into the weeds on all of this utility planning and information. So, when we're creating these policies or when we're doing these analyses, we take into account like coal plants that maybe are shutting down in the next 5 to 10 years. So instead of recommending that utility builds another coal or gas plant, this is a perfect opportunity for them to build battery and storage and all of that. So we take into account those like local and national energy things.
Got it. All right. I got a question from the chat room here from Lisa. Do you have a sense of what tools teams like the one in Virginia used before your tool? How did they attempt to do this analysis by hand? And so, I mean, there was probably some cracks at trying to do this before they brought you in, right?
Yeah, so the project we did with Virginia was with the Southern Environmental Law Center and the Georgetown Climate Center. So the Georgetown Climate Center actually had their own tool that they were using beforehand. It was a model, and we basically collaborated with them, saw what they were doing, added our assumptions in there, and created kind of like a super tool to figure out these forecasts of electric vehicles, what it would do to the environment and how it would benefit people.
Okay. And again, I'm kind of giving you sort of 101 questions here too, but like carbon footprint accounting, that's all part of this, right? That's kind of going to these models, but like really, what does that mean?
So starting off, we'll usually like say a city comes to us and they want to know how to lower their carbon footprint. We will take all of this information that we can possibly get, all this data about their buildings, what their energy burden looks like, which neighborhoods are affected most, what their quality of air already looks like, things like that. And then we will model their city using Athena and ACES and other tools to basically figure out what is your carbon footprinting going to look like in 20, 50 years without any intervention? What is it going to look like under maybe like a max case scenario? So you're just going to put 100% towards all renewables, doesn't matter. Or what does it maybe look like if you've only got a limited, budget, and what is the most cost-effective way? So we'll look at different scenarios with them and talk them through everything and figure out the best policies to move forward.
Well, I guess in that process too, if a city wants to engage or do work with you, do you find that a lot of it's word of mouth with existing communities that you're working with? Or are you just sort of doing out? Because sometimes people don't even know you have this sort of expertise. How does that work?
Yeah, it's definitely word of mouth. I think that, our recognition has gotten a little bigger lately. We just got a new communications team, so she's like charging the way and letting everyone know what our work is. Matt Cox, the CEO, he's got a lot of connections with the city. He's worked with the city. He's gotten his PhD at Georgia Tech, so it is kind of like a word of mouth sustainability circle of Atlanta. But we're growing. Hopefully, hopefully we can get more projects out there just based on our work itself.
And you're coming on places like Cimpatico, sharing your expertise. So,
Yes.
okay, so like what's next? Like specifically for you, but even for Greenlink Analytics, what are some of the 3 to 6 months out? What are you guys doing?
So right now we're definitely trying to grow. We're in the process of hiring a couple of people. We just hired somebody, so that's exciting. We're definitely trying to expand GEM, so adding more equity indicators in there. We're trying to figure out how to get multiple years worth of data in there so that people can see the trends in their neighborhoods. And we're also trying to build out our Athena model to be, I want to say, more user-friendly. And again, I'm sorry, Kevin, for butchering this. He is like the vision of Athena right now. But making it more user-friendly so that, we can quickly go in and it's more of like I want to say like a web-based application where, I can go in and type in all these inputs and it'll just spit out these Athena answers like quickly. So a lot of stuff coming in the pipeline.
And if someone really wanted to kind of see how things work, they could just go to your website. I think you have some resources there. They can it breaks down these different tools.
Yeah, so we're at greenlinkanalytics.org. We have a newsletter, so be sure to sign up for that. And then we've got Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn.
Excellent.
And then, sorry, you can also find the GEM tool on equitymap.org. It's a separate website, but you'll find it on our website anyway. So.
All right. Well, I think we've covered a lot of ground here, Samantha, and I appreciate you coming on. I want to take you into just chatting as we close out this episode, but you guys are doing some cool work, and I think we could have another conversation relatively soon about some of the other projects that you're doing. Like you said, you are in a growth mode, and I think there's going to be a huge demand what you're doing. But I want you to stay put. But thanks again for coming on Cimpatico.
Yeah, thanks so much. It's been a great opportunity.